So back to passion, and Bob will speak a little bit in a minute why this is critically important. I think this will be helpful for you too. There's actually a book I want to recommend if you haven't heard of it. It's called The Passion Plan, and I can give you a link to this later or put this somewhere where you guys can get to it. But it's written by a fellow named Richard Chang, and he has a quote in there that when I was reading it back, I forget when I first picked it up. It's been a while, but he had a quote that just stood off from the words on the page, just jumped out at me, and I've since written it, and I have a bunch of quotes posted up around my computer. But here's what the quote said, and it was in reference to people and following their passion. It says, "We spend a lot of time doing things we don't want to do in places we don't want to be for no other reason than we feel we have to. We have to bring home a paycheck, please our friends and family, and meet the expectation the world has set for us. If nothing else, we find ourselves in less than ideal situations out of habit. We follow the path our lives begin to take and are too afraid or reluctant to change our course as time goes by." And so basically, in a nutshell, I want to challenge you to go after your passion. What are those strengths that you have? What are those things that keep you up at night? What are those topics that you couldn't write enough about, that you just are constantly having ideas with? Then go after that passion. It's so incredibly important. And if you're following our mention this real quick, if you're following our blog at all, I wrote a blog post recently about 3 compelling reasons to find your passion. And these are constant reminders for me. Number 1, you will live life without regret. When you follow your passion, you'll live life without regret. Number 2, you will live life with energy and enthusiasm. I was just talking to Bob the other day. We jump on a conference call every once in a while. We Skype each other and talk about blogging and about our new blog that we're doing together. And I told him, I said, since I have made a go of this blogging thing, I have yet to look at my clock or look at my watch and be like, man, it's only 1:30 in the afternoon. And I constantly remember having that thought in my mind when I was working in the workforce and some of the jobs that I was doing, and it was like some afternoons just seemed to drag, or some mornings it seemed like just time just did not seem to go by. I mean, you've heard sayings like milk the clock or work for the weekends, um, things like that. And that hasn't, since I started pursuing my passion and really get into blogging, it's like I can't find enough time to work on this. I think about it, dream about it. I wake up at times thinking about new ideas of what to do, and it's really fulfilling a passion of mine. And then the third compelling reason is you will work at a higher level of performance. So, I mean, it gives you the fuel that you need to make things happen. So that's just kind of a short little challenge there that I wanted to talk about relating to this idea of passion. So I don't know, Bob, can you I guess weigh in a little bit about the importance of this?
Yeah, I was taking notes as you were talking, and and you said a whole lot that I wanted to say, so well done for reading my mind. Um, but uh but no, I mean I completely agree with you. As I guess some of you know my story, I mean I was in a job I really, really did not like, and and that really is kind of what fueled me to make this thing work. It's a pretty big challenge to make a full-time living from a blog, but it was something that I just kind of felt like I wanted to do so badly that that passion just kind of drove me through. It drove me to learn everything I could learn. It drove me to stay up till 2 a.m. On a Friday night writing posts, or wake up at 7 a.m. the next morning to write posts. It drove me to do all these things that helped me ultimately reach my goal. So anyway, so I think with our group based on the poll, I think it sounds like all of you at least have some idea of what that thing is for you, but yeah, I think that's really important to make sure that that's kind of the foundation of whatever this endeavor is for you. If it's a goal to make a full-time living, if it's a goal to to launch a consulting business or to launch a product off of your website or whatever, so it's a good idea to have this whatever this thing is, and like Jonathan was saying, it by whatever you're talking about, whatever you're thinking about, whatever, blogs you're reading, whatever you're talking to your spouse about at 11 o'clock at night. That's normally has something to do with what that thing is for you. So,
Excellent. When you were just talking, I was thinking about when you talk about how bad you wanted it. I had a period of time, and I think Bob, we've talked about this, where I had this. I think you had this experience too, where it was like analysis paralysis. You've probably heard that phrase, where I had just done a lot of reading. I had done a lot of, and some of my strengths is learning, and that's a weakness too, because I love to learn and read so much that I need to back it up with action. And I remember the first time I was really ready to make a go of it, I told somebody, I'm just ready to fail at something. It's like my spirit I had been reading so much about launching out and taking a risk and doing something that I was just completely at the point where I was ready to. I mean, it was almost like failing was going to be better in a way, just because I was ready to do something. So,
yeah,
anyways, I just
absolutely.
that's just was kind of a little bit of a reminder to me when you were talking. All right, let's move to the next one. Let's talk about commitment, and we spent a lot of time on passion. We'll move through some of these others a little bit faster. But commitment is very important. You have to just sell yourself, and you have to make sure that you just really um, commit yourself to the process. A little bit like Bob was talking about. You're writing blog posts late at night, and you're getting up and you're thinking about writing blog post. A little bit of that. There's actually a blog post that I read, I think it was yesterday, if anybody follows Michael Hyatt, michaelhyatt.com. He wrote a blog post called The Benefits of Playing Full Out. And in a nutshell, it's what are the benefits if I just totally commit to something? And one of the things he said in his blog post is, what does playing full out look like? In other words, what does it look like when I'm totally committed? And he listed a few things. He said it's being fully present, undistracted by anything else. It's also stretching yourself even when it makes you feel awkward or uncomfortable. And
That's
it's
good.
giving your best effort even when you're tired and want to quit. And then this is what was really kind of impactful for me. He said, here's three significant benefits to you just committing yourself to the process. Um, Number one, you bring out the best in others. So the idea is when you bring your A game to whether it's a meeting, a project, to your blog, it has a noticeable impact on others. It like raises the bar for everybody else. Another thing is commitment, being fully committed, you maximize your own learning experience. So when you are like fully present in the moment, you're fully engaged, you absorb and you take away more. So like through this webinar series, I want you to just to try to absorb everything that we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of bad information out there with blogging. There's a lot of people out there that haven't done the blogging. They're just making money trying to tell people about blogging or internet marketing. So I want you guys to just fully engage and just get totally absorbed and try to take away as much as you can from this. And then number three is you create the possibility of transformation. So when you fully commit, you actually give yourself a chance to change. And um, change is difficult. It's not easy. But whenever I'm kind of on the edge of doing something out of the norm, I know I'm growing. I'm expanding myself. I'm constantly pushing myself to grow farther beyond anything I've ever done before. So that's a little bit about commitment. Let's look at the next one about focus. And really, there's two ideas here. Number one, when we say focus, it's about not being a generalist when it comes to blogging. And I'm sure Bob would agree um, with this, but you need to have a central theme. In other words, you can't. It's very difficult just to have a blog that's all over the place and trying to build any type of traffic or consistent following if you're not at least in a general central theme. So that's one idea about focus. The second one is, and this is a big one for a lot of people, and that's not going after shiny objects. I call this shiny objects syndrome. It's like, everything that people see coming into them, they sign up for a lot of mailing lists, and you get all these crazy emails telling you, um, like this one I can't stand is about auto blogging, and it's like you can get all this automatic content to just flood into your blog, and all these people are going to come into the search engine, and they're going to show up, and things are going to be easy for you. There's no easy button. It's not going to work for you. In fact, I would probably advise you to go unsubscribe from a lot of these mailing lists. Of course, not Bob and our blogging your passion. We don't want you to do that. But that's kind of the idea behind focus. And to be honest with you, I'd like Bob to speak for a minute on talking about focus because he really is a great example to me about focus because there's an area in blogging that I call the pre-profit time, and that's where you are blogging as if you've already arrived for months, even though you still haven't really got anywhere. And Bob just believed in the process with his site and just kept pouring time and energy into it, even when he wasn't getting the results back in the beginning like he probably would have wanted. So, Bob, can you weigh in a little bit and kind of talk about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The pre-profit stage, I like that you call it that, because that article I wrote a while back ago, or a while back, I shouldn't say a while back ago, sorry, a while back about blogging and how I did it. I put a little chart in there showing, basically my timeline and my earnings as a chart. And like the whole first year, I mean, it was, very, very little money I made at the time. Now, granted, I was going into this not knowing anything about blogging. I didn't consider myself a very tech savvy person. So I really had to go through the school of hard knocks with a lot of this stuff and, figure out a lot of these things on my own. I mean, I spent hours on Google looking for, the answer to whatever problem I was going through, and it started with as simple questions as how do I put a link on a page, really, really simple stuff like that. So what I'm really excited about for all of you in the program is that, we can help you bypass a lot of that stuff and teach you a lot of these things. So you don't have to go through all those, and hopefully your curve will move a lot quicker. So anyway, back to focus as I'm veering off. That really is an important part. And like Jonathan was talking about with the shiny, what do you call it? The shiny what?
Shiny objects syndrome.
Shiny object syndrome. Yeah, and I see a lot of bloggers doing that, just getting distracted by little things, and this kind of ties into time management, which I won't get too much into. But there's so many things that you can do, and it requires, you know I mean, if you're going to do this in any reasonable amount of time, it requires like a focus on what is the most important thing I can be doing with my time, what is actually yielding results, what is actually bringing me closer to my goal, and in doing those things. So using Twitter, for a certain amount of time each day might get you closer to your goal, but sitting on Twitter for 3 hours each day probably isn't getting you any closer than using it for 15 minutes. And things like that, it's just like you were talking about, Jonathan, how, learning is your strength, but it's also your weakness. And there are a lot of things like that where, um, using something in the right proportion is beneficial, but using it in too much of a proportion, it becomes a big negative. So so anyway, focus, focus, focus. Very important. I'm completely with you, Jonathan, on that.